Please like, share and subscribe for more great content like this, and also please support us on Patreon. This one is a doozy, but bear with us, because if we're right, this could explain nearly every loose thread left over in the 9-episode saga, from the identity of Snoke and Rey and the events of the end of the sequel trilogy to the entire Chosen One prophecy and Anakin's virgin birth. Proceed at your own risk, because I really think I might have something here. Apologies if something similar has been posted here before, but we don't think anything ties as many things together as this theory does. Let's begin by meeting the players and recapping what we know, starting with Rey. What do we know so far about Rey's identity from the movies? Well, she is an incredibly powerful Force user, capable of defeating Kylo Ren in her first ever lightsaber duel with him. We know from Kylo, who may or may not be telling the truth in The Last Jedi, that supposedly her parents were just simple junk traders. Nobodies. And this got a lot of backlash because many of us, myself included, really want her to be connected to an original saga member, which Disney is likely aware of, at least especially now. We also know that she seems to be connected in some way to the Skywalker family, as simply touching the lightsaber of Anakin, Luke in The Force Awakens sent her into a Force vision of many of the events of the Skywalker saga. But we also know that Luke, by most accounts the most powerful Jedi ever, did not recognize her as his daughter even after he let himself reconnect with the Force. So that makes her being his daughter a conclusion difficult to justify. We also know that neither Han nor Leia recognized her as their child either, so seemingly we are at a dead end with Skywalkers. But why then did J.J. Abrams write into the script of The Force Awakens for Kylo to have such a strong reaction to the notion that there was a girl on Jakku who helped Finn and BB-8 escape Jakku, when he temper tantrum lightsaber slashes that console and then Force choke drags the officer across the room exclaiming, "What girl?" I'll explain in a minute, but my point here is that this implies that there is some sort of connection between Kylo, a Skywalker, and Rey that JJ clearly was planning on going somewhere with later. Okay, let's skip over to Snoke now. We have this immensely powerful Force user whom no one knows hardly anything about other than that he is an ancient being with immense knowledge in the Force. A dark side user who corrupts Kylo Ren, turns him to the dark side, and then dies very anticlimactically, frankly, like a little bitch in The Last Jedi. Fans are furious at Rian Johnson for killing off the big bad with little to no explanation. Okay, so some other loose ends with Rey outside of her parents' identity. Loose end number 1, after the Force vision in The Force Awakens, Maz Kanata comforts Rey, saying, "The belonging you seek is not behind you, it is ahead." What does that mean? Loose end number 2, during The Last Jedi, Rey enters the pool cave and tries to see her parents, only to see a seemingly infinite line of herself. What does that mean? Loose end number 3, during The Last Jedi, Rey enters the tree containing the Jedi texts and says, "I know this place," when clearly she hasn't ever been there before. What is that all about? Loose end number 4, during The Last Jedi, Rey and Kylo are connected by the Force, but according to Kylo, Rey is not doing it because the effort would kill you. Who or why is the Force connecting them? Okay, here comes the first major bombshell. I think Rey is a Skywalker. Not the daughter of Luke or Leia, but a Skywalker just the same. I think Rey is the very first Skywalker, born to normal parents on Jakku due to the Force seeking lasting balance. And she somehow, someway, directly or indirectly, will be responsible for the virgin birth of Anakin Skywalker. Now I'm sure someone has suggested she is connected to SHMI before, but let me explain my theory and let's think this through. Practical reasons why this could be the case. From Legends, we know that Lucasfilm had the Darth Plagueis material and has so far chosen not to canonize it. In the Darth Plagueis arc, the birth of Anakin Skywalker is revealed to have been indirectly caused by the Force meddling of Darth Plagueis himself. So, we already have an example for Disney to draw from of a powerful Force user causing the birth of Anakin. It was a great story, but they didn't canonize it. Why? Because they wanted to tweak it and use it themselves. The virgin birth of Anakin Skywalker and the Skywalker mythos still needs a good amount of explanation. Fans still don't know much about either. JJ and Lucasfilm have reported that they want to tie into not just some of the series with Episode 9 but the entire saga, prequels included. There are also rumors of a twist in this film greater than the I Am Your Father twist in Empire. This film needs to have a significant emotional gut punch and tie things up in a satisfactory way to bring together a very divided fan base. 5. Balance has been a key theme in Star Wars as of late. Before other reasons, let's expand and flush out my theory. I think that during the events of Episode 9, Rey will find out through Luke's Force Ghost and/or through the ancient Jedi texts a great deal about the Skywalker's mythos and realize that Kylo Ren and the Skywalker family are the key to everything. Through Luke and/or the texts, she will also realize, much like Luke did, that in order for there to be peace and order in the galaxy, both the Jedi and Sith must end. She will realize that the way forward for the galaxy is through the Grey Jedi concept Disney has been teasing us with recently through Ahsoka and other material that promotes balance. That in order to achieve true balance in the Force, one must not devote oneself to one set of teachings but instead seek a middle ground. She will also come to find out that despite the trouble its members have caused the galaxy, the Skywalker family has always been the key to ending the thousands of years of conflict between Jedi and Sith and bringing balance to the Force. Once reaching this realization, I think that she saves the galaxy and brings balance to the Force by redeeming Kylo Ren. Now I know what you are thinking, we've seen a redemption arc before, that would be so unoriginal of Disney. Not in the way I propose. What if Kylo only is partially redeemed, to the point of becoming a Grey Jedi? What if the way that he is redeemed is through Rey sacrificing herself to cause the conception of Anakin Skywalker? I personally would think it awesome if JJ introduces a little space-time force power allowing Rey to directly, through the Force, create life in SHMI. We've already seen Rey being immensely powerful well beyond where she is supposed to be, and fans are itching for a new Force power, something to top everything and anything we've seen before. Plus, we've already had teleportation, raindrops on Kylo's hand, and astral projection, Luke, introduced as powers in The Last Jedi. So why not give Rey the ability to create life and through the Force manipulate events in the past? Oh, and by the way, for evidence outside of wild speculation, remember how Vader means father in German, Dutch, well Rhea is the name of the Titan mother and goddess of fertility in Greek mythology. Coincidence? It could be. But imagine if that was the reason for her name all along. It could also be a coincidence that Rey, a girl from a desert planet who lives in poverty, would choose a slave woman on a desert planet to bear Anakin. Star Wars does love to rhyme. And the theme of a lost soul on desert planet finds adventure amongst the stars is the Skywalker way. After my wild speculation about very specific details that may or may not be right, let me convince you of the validity of the framework of my theory here. Think about how many loose ends just this part of my theory clears up. Rey's belonging is not back on Jakku but ahead. Check. Her sense of belonging and her real family are something she won't be united with until she sacrifices herself in Episode 9 and gets to be a Force ghost with Anakin, Luke, and eventually Kylo someday. Rey looks into the reflection in The Last Jedi and only sees herself in an infinite line? Check. She is seeing herself off in the past and the future as a representation of her infinite time loop and connections to the bloodline in the past and the future that she will start. How does she know the tree of the texts? She is part of a prophecy I will explain later, infinitely tied to the ancient texts written in that tree. We've already seen her have visions connected to other Skywalkers even though she wasn't there at the time. I think the time travel component, destiny of her character as a being of the Force makes her occasionally see things that are intimately connected to the Skywalkers, like the texts. How are Rey and Kylo connected? They are bound by destiny through the Force. The Force itself is reaching out to bring them together to achieve lasting balance in the Force. Plus, think of the effect on Kylo of watching someone who you thought was your mortal enemy sacrificing herself to make sure you were born. The emotional gut punch of Rey sacrificing herself to save Kylo and transcending into the Force, possibly alongside the Force ghosts of Luke and Anakin and maybe even Han and Leia, on Kylo would be a totally unique way to redeem Kylo and tie up the saga in a manner that would leave audiences in tears. And think of the lasting ramifications this would have on the saga. We've explained where Anakin came from, we've brought lasting balance to the Force through Kylo's redemption to Grey Jedi status, we've established why neither Luke, Leia, nor Han knew who Rey was and yet why Rey is so connected to the Skywalker lineage. We've ended the Skywalker saga of Jedi vs. Sith with an exclamation mark, but Disney will still have somewhere to go with Kylo and the Grey Jedi in the future if they so desire. From a purely marketing perspective, think how well this rectifies Rian Johnson's decisions in The Last Jedi without having to retcon anything. For all Kylo knows, Rey really is no one in The Last Jedi, but hold up now, you're probably thinking, but wait, what about the "what girl" comment that I brought up earlier? Well, enter into phase 2 of my theory, my friends, and it has to do with Snoke. Here is the second bombshell of my theory. Snoke is secretly a tragic character. Through the same knowledge that Rey learns in this episode, Snoke learned long ago of a prophecy surrounding the Skywalker family. Perhaps a reanalysis of a longer version of the Chosen One prophecy, Yoda, a prophecy that perhaps misread, maybe, reveals that the Chosen One refers to the Skywalkers, not just Anakin. Detailed within the prophecy are the events of the Skywalker saga, and they point to Kylo and Rey as the key to everything, not just Anakin. And you know how I think he knows this, he doesn't have the texts like Rey. Snoke is the first Jedi. He was there when the prophecy was written. We've already had the first Jedi brought up many times, and it would explain where Lucasfilm was going with that part of the mythos. It explains who he is, why he is ancient, and why he is so powerful. But Snoke is clearly a dark side wielder, so how could he be the first Jedi? Well, this is where we get the tragic character part. I think that as part of the prophecy extension revealed to us, we will realize that Snoke purposely let himself go to the dark side. Not entirely, but 99%. Knowing the future events through the prophecy and the death of Palpatine and Vader, Snoke knew that there would be no one else around to train Kylo in the dark side part of his Grey Jedi destiny. Snoke let himself succumb to the dark side power he needed to be able to seduce and train Kylo Ren in the dark side of the Force. This answers where he was all of the original trilogy, hiding in the outer reaches, wasting away physically under his own destructive power so as not to disrupt the events of the original 6 films and the origin of Kylo Ren. It also answers why Snoke is so easily killed. Remember that quote he says to Kylo in the throne room right before he is killed? "I see his mind. I see his every intent. He turns the lightsaber to strike true, and now, foolish child, he ignites it and kills his true enemy." What if that was Snoke sacrificing himself to both, 1. remove his dark side energy from the universe to promote balance, and 2. help Kylo destroy his true enemy, Kylo's own inner demons, the portion that made him weak and lack confidence and that would have made him unfit to lead the new society once balance is achieved. All along it all could have been Snoke manipulating Kylo into the position he needs to be in for Rey to be able to redeem him. Snoke was rather fond of telling Kylo to fulfill your destiny. Perhaps Snoke telling Hux to bring Kylo to him to complete his training at the end of The Force Awakens was referring to the throne room scene in Episode 8? So, if this is all true, Snoke wasn't killed anticlimactically at all. He was sacrificing himself to bring balance to the Force. It also explains why Luke had to die this episode, to keep things balanced. Plus, we can finally explain why Kylo reacted to the officer during his tantrum in The Force Awakens the way he did. What if Snoke told him only bits and pieces of what he knew of the prophecy, like to keep watch for a girl on a desert planet? That would explain Kylo's reaction. Think about how well all of this would recast The Last Jedi in a new light for Disney. Rian Johnson didn't ruin Snoke or ruin Rey's parentage. Snoke gets his backstory and an explanation as to why he and the First Order came out of nowhere. Luke's death could be seen as necessary to complete Rey's training via Force Ghost and the necessary parallel to Snoke's death in The Last Jedi to keep with the theme of balance. Rey isn't a Mary Sue, she is born as a fulfillment of a prophecy of the Force. It all works in Disney's favor. While we're not claiming all the details are correct of how Rey accomplishes the feat or the rest of it, we think that this theory as a framework perfectly satisfies all the things that Disney wants to accomplish: end the saga on a high note, fix their mistakes in The Last Jedi, add to the Skywalker and Force mythos and leave us with a truly unexpectedly twist or two and an emotionally gut-punching ending. If this is true, Disney didn't ruin Star Wars with The Last Jedi at all, they've known what they were doing all along. Maybe I'm giving Disney too much credit, but this is an episode 9 I would watch. Let us know what you think in the comments. And please remember to support us on Patreon for more videos like this one.